JP, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? First one in today. Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Comatose, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Okay, I'm just trying to pin the live. Scott, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Hi, Miles. Can I become millionaire from 23,000 XRP? 23,000 XRP is a great amount to have in your portfolio. Anything's possible inside the crypto space. Hello, CMF. Good to see you as well. Let's go. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Lena, good to see you. How you doing? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Free Forever, good to see you. How you doing? Blessings. Let's go, Mac. How you doing? Good evening, Miles and family. Ian, good to see you. How you doing? Just gonna pin the live quick. Okay. Good evening, Miles and family. Ian, let's go. How's your day? I was all over the place, I'll be honest. It's because tomorrow I'm going to be going on the family vacation, essentially, a little family trip, essentially up north a little bit. Yeah, we're going to go to the essentially just a little family trip to the Cotswolds. Good evening, Miles of CMF. Good to see you, Alex. How you doing? So today will be essentially the live show, and then tomorrow, so Thursday and Friday, there's going to be no live show. Monday or Tuesday is when I'm going to be back, which will essentially be when the live show continues. Apologies about that, everyone. Evening, Miles of CMF. Good to see you, Jason. How you doing? Good evening, Miles of CMF. Bull XLP. Good to see you. How you doing? Miles, are you sick? I hope not. I'll be very honest. I hope not. Now, let's do intro disclaimer, what we're going to go from tonight's live, and then essentially by that time, everyone should be tuned in for the first part. Welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this essentially for the first time ever, the CMF starts with Crypto Mouse family. My name is Miles. You can tune into this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. long time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, essentially politics, and regulations. Pretty much all the information you should know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. Also, we do Q&As in this live, which means if you do have any questions, put it down in the comment section. I'm more than happy to help you out. And thank you so much to everybody who has already liked and retweeted this live show if you're watching this on X. Thanks so much to everyone who's also essentially liked this live show if you're watching this on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, remember, smash the like buttons and smash the retweet buttons as well. Now, on tonight's live, we're going to be talking about the Fed because the rate cut has just happened. We're going to talk about essentially tech stocks, which ruined the rate cuts, but also it was priced in, hence the market didn't move it that much as opposed to be doing. We're also going to be talking about some prospective news on tonight's live as well. Some essentially announcements coming from major companies on essentially purchases they're doing inside the crypto space or acquisitions they're doing inside the crypto space, or even expanding beyond the United States as well inside the crypto space. Before we talk about any of those, let's go inside the comment section first. And the first news, as I said, is going to be about the Fed. We're going to cover on tonight's live. So let's see where we are at inside the comment section. I'm going straight into the first news. We were here. Happy days. Let's go, JP. I just want a bull run, is what Johnny said. Johnny, I think everyone's on the same page with that one. Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Evening, Miles of CMF. Joe, good to see you. How you doing? Let's all show some love and tap the screen to invite others to join. Let's go, Lena. Thank you so much for that. Now, the Fed. So we finally got a rate cut. It seems like Jerome Powell is playing essentially bull. He's not going to act like Gary Gensler, essentially knowing that his time is coming to an end and Trump is going to replace him no matter what. He did decide to do a rate cut, which was good for the market space. So Bitcoin is essentially back above around about $94,000 after the Fed lowered the rates by 25 basis points, but it didn't stand too strong after a rate cut. Now I'll explain why. Bitcoin reclaimed the $94,000 essentially levels today, staging a late session rebound shortly after the Federal Reserve essentially cut its benchmark rate by 25 basis points, which is good news. The move pushed the federal funds target range to 3.50% to 3.75%, marking a shift towards easing as policymakers acknowledge slowing job growth and rising essentially downside risk to employment. The essentially combination of a softer policy stance and improving liquidity conditions provided a short-term tailwind essentially for risk assets, with Bitcoin essentially reacting quickly to the change in tone. The Fed also emphasized that economic activity is expanding at a moderate rate, but labor essentially indicators have weakened throughout the year and inflation remains elevated. With uncertainty still high, officials essentially opted for a measured rate reduction to balance the risk of economic cooling against persistent price pressures. For markets, the decision essentially also signaled a clearer basis towards support, or essentially rather than the resistance. Liquidity operations, also including new treasury bill purchases, reinforced that shift, creating a backdrop that typically essentially helps Bitcoin stabilize during periods of macro essentially strains. Volume also remained essentially slightly picked up during the reversal phase as well. This reflects that buyers stepping back into the macro conditions turned more supportive. Despite earlier essentially volatility, the chart highlights a constructive reaction and that Bitcoin reclaimed a key psychological essentially level and avoided deeper also downside continuations. While policy easing is now on the way and the Fed essentially signaled it will essentially adjust further if the risks also essentially intensify, traders enter coming weeks with a clear macro essentially backdrop, and Bitcoin's response to the rate cuts shows that liquidity sensitivity assets remain essentially reactive to shifts in monetary directions, especially when outlook uncertainty is elevated. The most simplest way to put that is: one, we got a rate cut out of Jerome Powell. Two, the markets are still not as stable as they're supposed to be. Three, we could actually be expecting more rate cuts along the way. And four, it does seem like Jerome Powell is playing ball right now, even knowing that he's going to be replaced and his time is coming to an end. The simplest way to put all of that. Also, the markets didn't react in a massive firework type of rocket way to the good news and the bullish news of a Fed rate cut. Many reasons. One, it was essentially priced in, which the market in other words saw coming. Two, we had some case come out of nowhere today where a particular crypto project was used for illicit activities and is now being sued. And three, this happened regarding tech stocks. Out of all these, essentially out of all the days this news could have came out, it decided to come out exactly on the day we get a rate cut. So here it is. Intel and AMD, which everybody should be very familiar with, they make essentially computer chips, and tech stocks do affect the crypto market spaces from here to there, are accused of failing essentially to prevent their chips from being used in Russian missiles. It seems like essentially Intel and AMD during the sanction part, essentially during Russia being sanctioned, Intel and AMD was still selling computer chips to Russia to create missiles to essentially attack Ukraine. Those same essentially computer chips were used in Iranian missiles during the Israel and Iran situation. Shares of Intel and advanced macro devices have come under heightened scrutiny because of a series of class action lawsuits that all came about today, filed against them by citizens of Ukraine, affected by the war against Russia in the Texas essentially court. According to a Bloomberg report today, the lawsuits against both Intel Corp and Advanced Macro Devices Inc., in other words AMD, and Texas Instruments Inc., blame them for failing to keep their technology out of Russian weapon-made hands and that have been used in the war against Ukraine. Both companies, along with a company owned by Warren Buffett Berkshire, I'm not surprised by that one, reportedly looked the other way deliberately. So, while essentially Biden's administration of circus freaks were feeding billions into Ukraine to go up against Russia, on the other side of the spectrum, Intel and AMD were selling computer chips to Russia to essentially attack Ukraine. So one side, the American government was supporting Ukraine. The other side, the American corporations were funding Russia's war. The lawsuits also essentially cited 5 attacks that took place between 2023 and 2024 and claimed dozens of lives. These attacks allegedly involved Iranian-made drones also with components associated with Intel and AMD. So it seems like not only was Intel and AMD selling computer chips to Russia, but they were also somehow selling it to the Iranian government. Both countries, by the way, sanctioned, Iran and Russia. And Berkshire Hathaway, who was also a part of this major scandal, decided to deliberately look the other way, like it never happened. Until now, obviously, there's a lawsuit. So, in the past, both companies claimed essentially they fully complied with sanctions and requirements and seized businesses in Russia when the war broke out, is essentially what Intel and AMD said in the early days, that they are not selling to Russia or to any other sanctioned country out there in any sort of a way, but they were. In a congressional testimony essentially last year, Shannon Thompson, the Assistant General Counsel at Texas Instruments, said the company strongly opposed the use of our chips and Russian military equipment and any other such essentially shipments or illicit unauthorized essentially activity. Despite also such statements, it became essentially clearer that long-standing sanctions and export controls have not been able to keep the chips from AMD and Intel Texas Instruments and others out of the hands of Russian essentially military companies. Hence the lawsuits also regarding that matter, which were essentially filed in Dallas by Mikkel Watts, a veteran US mass tort lawyer, on behalf of Ukraine citizens. The US government is also reportedly aware that these chips are still getting into Russian hands and has repeatedly warned chip makers that they need to do more to stanch this flow of chips. Last year, Democratic Senator Richard accused companies of objectively and conscientiously essentially failing to prevent Russia from benefiting from the use of their technology. Suits essentially on Wednesday, suits have also identified Mansfield, Texas-based essentially Electronics, a company by Berkshire Hathaway, acquired in 2007 when it brought Mansfield partner company TTI Inc. as a pain point for the whole issue. According to reports, the business is focused on selling and distributing semiconductor components and has been accused of facilitating the transfer of chips made by Intel, Texas Instruments, and others to shell companies controlled by Russian proxies. So, Intel and AMD, creating computer chips, as they always do, decided to essentially work with Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway essentially brought a company back in 2007. Through that shell company back in 2007 until now, Intel and AMD have been selling computer chips to Russia to build missiles and also to Iran, ironically. The case essentially were filed in Texas because the chip companies and Monsieur are either based there or substantially operational in the state. And there's also the fact that the war made leveling the acquisitions in the Ukraine court system essentially impossible. Despite the allegations, stocks of both Intel and AMD have shown some resilience, but not too much, and tech stocks are getting very shaky because of this news. The lawsuit against AMD and Intel are coming out not long after the episode between Taiwanese authorities and one of Intel's newest executives, Wei Jian Liu. The officials were reportedly investigating whether Liu was formerly with the TSMC, who may have stolen sensitive essentially technology related to advanced semiconductor processors. So maybe even essentially there is, a connection between Intel and AMD also selling semiconductor chips for missile use by China. During the raid, prosecutors seized the computers and other materials, and a court order froze some of Liu's assets, including real estate. As a part of the inquiry, TSMC has also since launched a legal action accusing Liu of violating non-compete essentially agreements and trade secret regulations before his exit from the company. Liu also joined Intel as a vice president of research and development after essentially retiring from Taiwan's semiconductor in July, where he essentially held a senior role in corporate strategies and advanced node technology development. So, simplest way to put it, Intel and also essentially AMD were selling computer chips to a shell company in the US, which was essentially brought out by Berkshire Hathaway back in 2007. Berkshire Hathaway apparently knew that Intel and AMD were selling essentially chips to this company, and this company was essentially selling them back to Russia during sanction times when Russia was going head-to-head with Ukraine. And also on the same bandwagon, it turns out that a man who was in charge of Taiwan's essentially semiconductor chips, who ironically is also an ally of the US, was sharing secret information with essentially China. So AMD, Intel are right now on shaky grounds because this could be seen as espionage, in other words, because one person got caught for selling essentially secret information from Taiwan. Two, Berkshire Hathaway was looking the other way while knowing everything that was happening, making millions of dollars from selling semiconductor chips to essentially Russia to make millions from them, and to Iran, ironically. And three, during this whole war, when Biden's administration was sending tax-paying money essentially to Ukraine, was sending US tax dollars to Ukraine to go head-to-head with Russia. On the other side of the spectrum, AMD and Intel were also selling computer chips to Russia to go head-to-head with Ukraine. And this is a ginormous scandal that's just came out right now. This will definitely put tech stocks on some shaky grounds, especially AMD and Intel, because that is just pathetic, the best way to put it. I know it's just all business, but that is absolutely pathetic. They went against their own country. And then that did essentially make tech stocks a little bit shaky, which made essentially crypto a little bit shaky as well on that side. Now, putting that to one side with the ridiculous, essentially, connections that are going on to Strive is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Before we talk about Strive, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see what's happening there. And then we go straight into the next news on tonight's live. Let's see what's happening. Ian, thank you so much for the £20 donation. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Ian. Honestly, thank you, brother. We were here, I think it was it? Nope, we were here. Hi, mouse. Nope, okay, we were here. Why is mouse not working? There we go. Hi, Miles of CMF. Stormy, good to see you. How you doing? Good day, Miles of CMF. Mike, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Scott, let's go. Powell may be playing bull, but he can talk some BS low. I agree 100%. When is the rate out and the Clarity Act? The rate was today, 25 basis point rate cut. And regarding a Clarity Act, we're still expecting it to come out. Hi, Miles and family. Alex, good to see you. How you doing? Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you. Morning, how you doing, Shelly? Hi, Miles and CMF. Family, good to see you guys. Let's go for Facts News. Let's go, Carl. How you doing? No joke, bull run taking a long time. Yep, I will get in front of the bulls and let them chase me. Maybe then they'll run. Just a thought to get them running. Fair enough. Espionage. Any news on XDC and XLM on H-bar? Not so much, I'll be very honest. Just some chart movements is what's happening. I can't see the reduction in the rate helping much. Yeah, they're not helping at all, to be fairly honest, because out of all the days that this news could have came out of espionage scenarios, they choose the exact day the 25 basis rate cut comes out. And also, it was priced in slightly as well. Miles, I have a Uniswap, essentially crypto account. Do you think it is a good idea to transfer my crypto from this account to my Trust Wallet account as January 1st, 2026 is coming soon? Sure, not financial advice at all. Now, Strive. Do you think the Clarity Act will be approved by January 2026? I hope so. I'll be very honest. They said the Clarity Act should be approved by essentially by the end of the year, to be fairly honest. So going into the first quarter next year, we should already have a Clarity Act in place. So they're expecting to finish it off, sign it, done deal by the end of this year. Let's see what happens on that. Now, Strive Inc. is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Another company has decided to essentially launch into the crypto space. Strive Inc. is launching essentially $500 million of stock essentially offerings to fund Bitcoin purchases. They're following the footsteps essentially of MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet, and the list goes on. Strive Inc. has announced essentially a $500 million stock offering to fund further Bitcoin essentially acquisitions. The offering will involve issuing variable essentially rate series and essentially preferred stocks under the ticker SATA. The Proceeds from this offering will primarily be used to expand the company's Bitcoin holdings, positioning Strive for future growth. This move also marks a significant deepening of Strive's commitment to Bitcoin as a central component of its corporate strategy. Currently, the company holds 7,525 essentially Bitcoin, making it one of the top 15 corporate essentially Bitcoin holders. The offering also will be conducted using an anti-money essentially at the market essentially AMT structure, providing flexibility to raise capital gradually. Brokers also including Cantor Fitzgerald and Barclays will also manage the sale, allowing Strive to sell shares in response to market conditions. The AMT structure offers Strive a way to raise capital in a more controlled manner, ensuring the company can respond to prevailing essentially market trends. This strategy also mirrors the model employed by other companies heavily investing in Bitcoin, such as MicroStrategy. The net proceeds from this offering will be directed towards essentially acquisition of Bitcoin and related assets. Strive also plans to use the funds for general corporate essential purposes, such as acquiring income-generating assets and funding working capital. This approach is a part of the Strive essentially broader effort to expand its Bitcoin reserves while continuing its business developments. In addition, the company is also exploring the possibilities of acquiring complementary businesses or technologies to further strengthen its position inside the market space. Strive's transformation to a Bitcoin-focused entity has been ongoing since its reverse merger back in May 2025. As of November essentially 2025, the company ranks as the 14th largest corporate essential holder of Bitcoin with 7,525 Bitcoins, reflecting investor confidence in Strive's essentially long-term strategy. And Strive 2025, with this new capital rise, Strive aims to build on its Bitcoin holdings and solidify its position inside the corporate Bitcoin holder as a corporate Bitcoin holder, which in other words, it is essentially very positive for the market space. Anything that happens on Bitcoin scale indirectly adds value towards the market space as well, because it shows the crypto market space is maturing as it moves along. And when millions and millions have been pouring into it, is good news, brilliant news, honestly, to be very honest, and bullish news. Now, moving on from Strive to US President Donald Trump's family. So, family of US President Donald Trump launches a new Bitcoin push. American Bitcoin, and under the ticker ABTC, the Bitcoin mining and treasury company backed by US President Donald Trump's son, announced in essentially a statement that it has purchased approximately 416 more Bitcoins since the last update on December 2nd. This purchase, valued at approximately $38.8 million, at current prices increased the company's total essentially Bitcoin holdings to 4,783 Bitcoins. As of essentially December 8th, this figure essentially further solidifies American Bitcoin's position among the top 25 publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies. The company also quickly increased its reserves after purchasing 363 Bitcoins just last week. Furthermore, the firm's Satoshi per share indicator rose by more than 17% month on month to 507. The company also stated that this metric was created to give investors a clearer view of what essentially of their indirect Bitcoin exposures through their share ownerships. And it has essentially, this was essentially what was said by American Bitcoin. It has only been 3 months since our listing on the NASDAQ. And in that time, we have become one of the largest and fastest growing Bitcoin accumulators. Our cost structure and margin profile strongly positions us for long-term value creation. And we are focused on advancing our strategy and maintaining this momentum going forward. American Bitcoin is a subsidiary in which Hut 8 essentially is the majority shareholder, is backed by Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. The company went public back in September through a fully equity essentially based reserve merger, and resulting in American BTC and Trump brothers holding approximately 98% of the combined stakeholders essentially in this company. So a company that the Trump family is a part of has just purchased a tremendous amount of Bitcoin, roughly about $38.3 million worth of Bitcoin, while the markets are essentially at those levels they are at right now. So if you're wondering to yourself, is anybody buying in levels like this? Yes, apparently there's a lot of people buying still. And they should be, because if you know what's going to happen next in terms of the regulations coming out, where the market space is going to be going in 2026 and 2027 and beyond, is all about institutional money, high-profile investors, because that's all the departments that are being opened up in all these crypto exchanges, Binance, Coinbase, Crypto.com, the list goes on. You can tell where the market is going. Now, putting that to one side, we're going to Trump family news. 2, Superstate is what we're going to look at next on tonight's live. Before we talk about Superstate, let's go inside the comment section first. This was happening there, and then straight into the next news on tonight's live. Let's see where we're at. We were at here. Hello, Miles. Good to see you, all country. How you doing? Miles, I have a Uniswap crypto account. Okay. Do you think it's a good idea? Oh, I read that one. Okay, we were here, I think. Nope, we're here. Let's go, Miles. Share the live, family and friends. Let's go, Scott. What up, Miles and CM? What up, Miles and CMF? Ray, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Do you ever see XRP and XLM or maybe even XDC partnering in the industry? Yes, XLM has great partnerships, to be fairly honest. XRP has amazing partnerships. So does XDC. They all have good partnerships going for them. You mean beyond what they're essentially, the partnerships they have now? I do definitely see them growing beyond that. Now, Superstate. Superstate essentially launches an SEC-approved tokenized share issuance on Ethereum and Solana. Superstate introduced a new pathway that brings public equity issuance on blockchain networks through a regulated structure. Now, yesterday's live, I revealed to everyone regarding the CFTC greenlighting the derivatives market space, essentially regarding Bitcoin derivative market space getting greenlighted, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP getting a special green light for the derivative market space. And today we got more announcements coming regarding Superstate essentially introducing a new pathway that brings public equity issuance on blockchain networks through regulated structures. So the developments essentially arrives as the US regulators essentially accelerate experiments that merge traditional finance with blockchain infrastructure. A lot of that is going on as we get closer to the end of the year. The launch essentially positions Superstate at the center of the efforts to modernize how public companies raise money and maintain shareholder records. The direct issuance program lets issuers receive capital in stablecoins while investors receive tokenized shares in real time. This structure also allows companies to manage shareholder updates instantly through Superstate's essentially regulated transfer agent system. Additionally, the program also essentially supports existing share classes, only essentially digital classes, giving companies more flexibility in how they engage in terms of their investors. Superstate also expects the first offerings to launch in 2026. The firm argues that companies need issuance rails that manage essentially global flows and deliver immediate settlement, hence the appeal of stablecoin-based transactions, and it grows as the market space demand more certainty and speed. The approach also essentially helps smaller issuers reach investors who prefer blockchain-based assets with transparent lifecycle essentially tracking. Regulators also under the Trump administration encourage more crypto-friendly essential innovation, which strengthens interest in tokenized securities. Both the SEC and the CFTC now essentially advance guidelines that reduce uncertainty around digital issuance. Moreover, large issuers and fintech firms continue to test on-chain models and integrate it with compliance tools and custodial systems. That's why I mentioned essentially a little bit earlier on regarding Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP getting green light from the essentially CFTC, which we talked about yesterday on the derivatives market space. Tokenized shares issue essentially, though, the program can include programmable features that update governance or distribution rules automatically. Besides, the digital structure allows integrations with on-chain settlements and portfolio managements and the institutional custody providers. These features may attract investors seeking assets that combine regulatory essentially protection with efficient blockchain execution. Superstate intends to open its offerings to both retail and institutional buyers after KYC checks. The initiative may help also reshape how issuers approach capital formation and investors access regulated digital securities. So, Superstate is about to be opening its doors in 2026 to essentially tokenized share issuance of Ethereum and Solana. And they're going to be starting out with Ethereum and Solana, obviously expanding into other crypto assets as time goes by. This is great news for Ethereum, great news for Solana, indirectly great news for also the crypto space as well. The idea of more institutions entering the crypto space is always good because it adds liquidity, it adds essentially a level of maturity towards the crypto space as well. Putting that to one side, which is very bullish news, I would have to say. Two, Van Eck is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Before we talk about Van Eck, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see what's happening there. So we were here, I think, regarding where we were at. Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Crackling. Is my voice crackling on the live? Can everybody hear me and see me? If you can hear me and see me, thumbs up inside the comment section. If you can't hear me or see me properly, thumbs down inside the comment section, just out of curiosity. Can everybody see me and hear me? Or is my voice crackling? Just want to see what's happening. Miles, I was thinking of XRP and XLM and XDC coming out together to form Colgate in the crypto industry. Ah, okay. Will the money flowing through the crypto industry be able to be tracked in time for the next, essentially, election cycle? Yes, depending on which crypto, but yes. Hi, Miles. How's things? Essentially, I made it. Better late than never for sure. Let's go autistic. Good to see you. How you're doing, Miles? I tried to get on earlier at 10:05. Hope I've not missed too much. Nope. Yeah, you're good. Very good. Good with a little crackling. The best group online because of clarity, facts, and live activity, active Q&A sessions. If you agree, drop 100. Let's go, Scott. Joe says good. Adi says good. Scott says good. Just a little bit of crackling is what's going on. It's it has to be restream, I would have to say, or it could just be my effort. US forces seize tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Yep, I saw that today. Crackling on the voice. Okay, Miles, your voice is crackling a little bit. Okay, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Shelly, for letting me know as well. I hope the crackling essentially resolves itself as we go along, to be fairly honest. I don't know why. It has to be restreamed, to be honest with you. So hoping essentially resolves itself. Yes, you're crackling a little bit on X. Okay, so hope it resolves itself as we go along. If it gets worse, then obviously we'll do something about it, but hope so it resolves. Now, regarding the U.S. forces essentially seized tanker off the coast of Venezuela, I saw that essentially, and some people are against it, some people are for it. Where I stand essentially is in the middle. Venezuela it has a incredibly corrupt government, but I mean, no government is essentially genuine, to be fairly honest. But Venezuela has unbelievably corrupt government, so taking oil away from them isn't really taking like oil away from their people, because the corrupt government of Venezuela doesn't give their people anything: food, water, gas, electrics, oil. So Trump basically stole from the Venezuelan government, not the people of Venezuela, to be fairly honest. Now, VanEck to rename essentially their gaming ETF and shifting focus to degen economy in 2026. So it seems like VanEck is more than ever impressed with the crypto space, where they're now changing their ETFs from gaming ETF, the gaming ETF that they do have, to a degen essentially economy ETF for the crypto space. So here it is. VanEck announced today that it will rename its gaming ETF to the VanEck degen essentially economy ETF in 2026. The move reflects the fund's essentially shift in focus to growing digital economies, and the ETF will track the degen economy index, which covers essentially sectors like digital finance, cryptocurrency exchanges, iGaming, and digital sports betting. To qualify for the index, companies must generate at least 50% of their revenue from these industries, and the new strategy also includes gig economy services like ride-hailing, food delivery, online forms. All have to be digital related. The ETFs also remaining follows a board meeting held essentially as a part of the changes. The fund will adapt a essentially unitary fee structure, simplifying its expense essentially model. The new investment objective and principal strategy will continue into effect after April 8th, 2026, with the ETF tracking companies in emerging sectors. This will also mark the first ever fund with degen in its same name, signaling VanEck's recognition of the sector's potential. VanEck's move to rebrand the gaming ETF underscores the growing importance of decentralized markets. The degen economy is an emerging segment driven by digital platforms and speculative market spaces. The shift essentially reflects increased essentially investor interest in initiative business models tied to digital gaming, finance, and online services. This decision also aligns with trends that show degen investors are growing economic forces in the digital market space. VanEck's strategic essentially adjustments comes as more investors turn to these sectors as high risk, essentially potentially higher return opportunities. The rebranding is likely to appeal to a new generation of investors attracted to digital first model businesses, and the ETF's new index will include companies involved in digital sports, cryptocurrencies, and fintech sectors. So VanEck has actually went through the trouble of changing one of their own ETFs, which was a gaming ETF, to a crypto ETF. that involves crypto companies, crypto exchanges, and any other innovative essential crypto sectors are a part of VanEck's new crypto ETF, which is going to be called DGen, essentially ETF. I mean, it does really show you that, crypto is the next wave when companies like VanEck are changing their ETF names and structures. Now, moving on, essentially what VanEck had to say to Japan. Aminico essentially partners with Solve to unlock Bitcoin yield for Japanese firms. In the past week, we have been getting some announcements from Japan in terms of the steps they're taking inside the crypto sector. One being essentially they're lowering the level of essentially tax on cryptocurrencies from the ridiculous 40% to now a standard, somewhat 20% essentially crypto tax, which is still too high and it should be lowered. But that is the best they can offer right now. It's better than 40%. Two, we've had 7 behemoths out of Japan come out of nowhere and say they want to be more involved inside crypto space and start investing more inside crypto space as well. And 3, we have now got announcements essentially out of Japan that Bitcoin yield is where they're heading next to as well. So Aminico Brands has partnered with decentralized finance platform Solve Protocol to help large Bitcoin holders in Japan generate yield from their holdings. The collaboration targets essentially corporations and listed entities with substantial Bitcoin treasuries, aiming to transform how Japanese companies utilize their digital asset reserves. Amo, the CEO essentially of Aminico Brands in Japan, explained that the most companies only hold Bitcoin without leveraging it for additional returns. The partnership essentially with Solve aims to create an environment where companies can use Bitcoin as a reserve essentially engine that drives corporate growth rather than simply holding it as a static financial asset. Do you know where all of this came about? It came about when the US, in terms of the companies that have Bitcoin ETFs, started refiling for Bitcoin ETFs for staking rewards, or essentially Ethereum staking rewards, and so on, which essentially prompted Hong Kong to look into staking rewards for cryptocurrencies, Singapore to look into staking rewards for cryptocurrency in terms of ETFs, and now Japan to look into staking rewards for ETFs as well. Bitcoin traditionally essentially doesn't generate yield because holding it in a wallet essentially produces no interest, dividends, or staking rewards. The asset essentially requires external systems such as lending or locking mechanisms to produce some sort of returns to holders. Solve offers essentially annual percentage yields between 4% and 12% through its universal Bitcoin-backed wrapper. The platform also generates returns through lending markets, liquidity provisions, and to automated market maker pools, with participation and structures staking programs according to its white paper. Ryan Cho, the co-founder and CEO of Solve, stated this essentially his protocol has been proven essentially by proven Bitcoin can serve as a productive capital. He described the next expansion phase essentially as delivering secure, compliant, high-yielding treasury solutions to Japan's most forward-thinking corporations. Solve is backed by investors also essentially, including Binance Labs and Blockchain Capital, with over $2.8 billion in managed assets under the protocol. The platform also has established itself as a significant player in the Bitcoin yield generation space. Japan hosts about 11 public companies holding Bitcoin and essentially on their balance sheets, according to essentially BitBo data. Essentially, Metaplanet leads the Japanese Bitcoin's treasuries and ranks 4th globally with approximately 30,823 coins on its balance sheets. Nexon, a South Korean video game developer headquartered in Japan, also holds roughly about 1,117 Bitcoins in second position. Consulting services company Remixi Port rounds out to top 3 with 1,273 Bitcoins, also demonstrating growing institutional adoption among Japanese firms seeking digital asset exposure and yield opportunities. Japan is going very big right now in terms of essentially staking rewards and so on. And this all has to do with the US. The moment the US, the American companies, decided to file in yield services or staking services with their ETFs, it created the domino effect in the Japanese market space, created domino effect in Hong Kong's market space and Singapore's market space as well, to start looking at the yields and staking rewards for ETFs or any company holding the asset itself. This is brilliant news, honestly. This is what America does to the rest of the world. It creates a ripple effect, a positive one. Now, Moving on from that to Michael Saylor, who is not happy at all. So Michael Saylor is taking action on its issue that could bring disaster to Bitcoin. And this is essentially what's going on. And it is something we've discussed beforehand, but we have an update on this matter now. Strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, has given a strong response to critical MSCI advisory process that could determine the fate of companies holding Bitcoin as a streak asset on their balance sheets. The company submitted its formal essentially opinion against the essentially MSCI proposed plan to remove digital asset treasury companies' DATs from its global investable essentially market indexes, arguing that the proposal is arbitrary, discriminating, and also essentially policy driven. It is estimated that there could be an $8 billion asset outflow if strategies delisted from the indices. It does seem like certain companies or certain banks don't want MicroStrategy to have such a big position on Bitcoin. And if they're able to shift MicroStrategy essentially from the indices, then it will definitely cause some sort of ripple effect inside the market space, and not a good one. In a detailed letter to the MSCI, strategy emphasized that DATs are not mutual funds, but rather operate as operational companies. The company essentially stated DATs are not passive Bitcoin funds. They actively use Bitcoin to create value for essentially stakeholders, the essentially shareholders. Strategy also noted that it is currently developing innovative Bitcoin-backed digital lending products similar to those historically offered by banks and insurance companies. Strategy also argued that the MSCI proposed rule of exclusion from the index if 50% of the balance sheet is comprised of digital assets. It is discriminatory essentially practice specified to this sector. The company also pointed out that other companies concentrated in a single asset class, such as oil, gold, real estate, or media, do not receive this treatment. In other words, MicroStrategy is coming out and saying, Michael Saylor is coming out and saying that I'm being single-handedly picked from a massive list of companies who are also involved in the same sector as me, or having some sort of Bitcoin holdings. And why is it only being me that's being picked out of everyone? It is honestly because certain companies or certain banks don't want essentially, Michael Saylor to have such a strong position inside of Bitcoin. It almost reminds you of when essentially Ripple was going head-to-head with the SEC. The letter also stated that the rule in question was particularly essentially unenforceable. Fluctuations in asset prices, different accounting rules, and international reporting differences would cause DATs to constantly enter and exit indexes, leading to instability. Strategy stated that essentially MSCI mission is to reflect financial markets impartially, but the proposal targets a specific asset type and incorporates essentially policy elements into the index methodology. This, they argued, would undermine MSCI's essentially role as an important and impartial index provider and create confusion for investors. I'll be very honest, if MicroStrategy wants to get out of this whole entire situation, he has two options. One, offload some Bitcoin, which would cause a ripple effect inside the market space, but a bigger ripple effect will be when he gets kicked out of indices coming essentially January, which would cause a dump inside the market space, and they're estimating an $8 billion outflow will be happening essentially if MicroStrategy gets kicked out of the indices. So before that happens, you can offload some Bitcoins to make whoever is going up against them happy, or two, start diversifying MicroStrategy's portfolio. Honestly, and if I was Michael Saylor, I would choose option two. Start diversifying essentially the portfolio of MicroStrategy so that whoever it may be that is going to essentially go head-to-head with MicroStrategy would maybe think otherwise, because they clearly don't want MicroStrategy to have such a huge position in Bitcoin. So maybe diversify or offload some, because if you don't and January comes around and you do end up losing your position in indices, that will cause a ripple effect inside the crypto market space. Now, consumer groups is what we're going to be talking about next on tonight's live. Today we have had some interesting news from the circus freaks of essentially Biden's era, and by that I mean the Democratic politicians, which is essentially they were able somehow, I don't know where they get essentially these types of people from, but so far the Democratic Party has tried to stop the Genius Act. They failed. Then they tried to stop the Clarity Act, which they were able to to slow it down due to a government shutdown situation. Then they tried to go after Trump and his family for getting involved in crypto. Then they essentially decided to go after any crypto company, before that, during essentially Biden's era on Gary Gensler. From start to end, the moment crypto came into the picture, Democrats have tried to stop it from every angle. And knowing that Trump's family is inside of crypto, they love the idea even more of trying to stop it somehow. And then they try to go after Trump's crypto, essentially, advisor, saying that he's essentially embezzling money, which is interesting coming from Senator Elizabeth Warren and essentially Nancy Pelosi. But here is the newest addition from the Democratic Party to try to stop the crypto sector. Consumer groups join unions trying to derail the US crypto market structure bill. Consumer advocates and financial reform groups are lining up alongside some unions in opposition against the state's legislation that will impose regulations on the US crypto markets. Believe me, I'm very surprised on the unions they got to go up against the crypto bill. The teachers' union is one of them. What's the relevance? Arguing that the current versions leave crypto consumers vulnerable to fraud. You don't say, because we don't have regulations, which ironically the Democrats keep on stopping. You know what's funny about the Democratic politicians that are signing essentially these unions to come forward? That they're all blaming the crypto sector for the fraud and situations that's going on, but yet they're all essentially the ones that are stopping the crypto regulations from. So how can you complain about crypto fraud when you're the one that's trying to stop the regulations? Maybe don't stop the crypto regulations so the crypto fraud slows down. The Senate, essentially, it gets more funnier than this. The crypto markets are arguing that the current versions leave crypto consumers vulnerable to fraud. The legislative essential initiatives explored in the Senate so far have largely failed to address the widespread harms caused by the crypto industries, and the Senate should not consider any bill that does not address these problems in full. Essentially said the letter sent to the senators this week, signed by almost 200 groups, including Better Markets, Public Citizen, Americans for Financial Reform, and the Communication Workers of America. It also follows essentially a similar objection raised this week by the Teachers Union and the AFT. Some of these union groups have zero relevance towards the crypto space, but yet they're signing the piece of paper. Though the House of Representatives passed a bill early this year to govern crypto in US, the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, the Senate continues to hash out its own version, largely built on the Clarity Act, but pursuing some different approaches. The senators negotiating the bill in a closed-door session have said the process is nearing a conclusion. And one of them, Senator Cynthia Lummis, said essentially today that she hopes it can still get a formal markup this week. One of the major points of the debate is the Democrats' concerns over apparent conflicts of interest in government officials. The Democrats are angry that the Trump family is involved inside the crypto space and that every time crypto does good, Trump's family does good. And the ironic part that the people that signed this or pushing this forward are Pocahontas, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Her portfolio beats essentially hedge funds just the same way Nancy Pelosi's does. Any legislations must effectively address the unprecedented and coercive impacts of President Trump's and his family's conflicts invested in various crypto ventures, it said. They're basically trying to say the Trump family is not allowed to be in crypto in any sort of a way, and that then we essentially maybe let crypto breathe for a little while. How about no? And go and F yourselves. Lummis said she worked with ethics provisions for the bill with a Democratic colleague, but the White House has so far rejected the proposal. The latest opposition letter from consumer advocates was also signed by progressive environmental groups that don't usually weigh in on financial policies, including Greenpeace, the Center of Biological Diversity and Animals or Sentient Beings. They've even got animal unions, so animal charities, animal unions, to sign a petition to go against crypto. That's how far the Democrats went. They got teachers' unions to sign the document. animal charity unions to sign a document to go against crypto. That's how far they're taking it. A rift has developed among Democrats, lawmakers on supporting crypto legislations, with Senator Elizabeth Warren, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, leading this progressive, essentially, members in criticism of the effort, is what they're calling it. This legislation poses profound risks to the pensions of working families and the overall stability of the economy. No, it doesn't. According to the teachers' union letter, which foresees its concerns on the dangers to its members' retirement funds posed by the US embraces of cryptocurrencies. Okay, this is how stupid some of these Democrats are and the stupid information they share publicly. It's optional if you want your pensions in cryptocurrencies. The government's not going to force you to essentially put your pensions in cryptocurrencies. But that is the image Senator Elizabeth Warren is selling to Democrats right now. That once this legislation passes, a Clarity Act essentially passes, or other crypto regulations pass, they're going to force everyone in the United States essentially to put their pensions in crypto. That is the image Senator Elizabeth Warren is using to scare all these Democratic politicians and her supporters away from crypto. That's how she got the teachers' union to sign a document to go against the crypto space, because she told teachers that if this legislation comes, the government's going to force your pensions into cryptos, which is a blatant lie. Rather than just essentially, it gets worse, the essentially which foresees its concerns of dangers to its members and retirement funds posed by the US and embraces of cryptocurrencies. Rather than just being silent on crypto, this bill strips the few safeguards that exist for crypto and erodes many protections for traditional securities. If passed, it will undercut the safety of many assets and cause problems across retirement investments. Again, no, it won't. She's blatantly lying. Despite vocal pushbacks from some Democrats, finally, some Democrats are starting to wake up and go against Senator Elizabeth Warren's complete BS. Congress has managed to move forward with the baptism votes on crypto legislations, including new stablecoin laws that were essentially approved earlier this year, and other regulations to be coming next. So, when the Democrats tried to stop essentially every possible way they could when it came to the crypto space, now the next step, just lie. Lie as much as you can to scare people away from crypto. That is the worst thing that essentially Elizabeth Warren could do, pretty much. As a human being, as a politician, to be lying, I mean, it is in their blood, to be fairly honest. But for anybody actually listening to Elizabeth Warren and believing her BS, I do feel sorry for you. Honestly, if anybody is listening to Elizabeth Warren's and one of Elizabeth Warren's followers or so on, people should be starting to sleep. You know, in terms of that, but potentially the Democrats are actually turning a now. Before we talk about the next news on tonight's live, let's go inside the comment section first. This was happening there, and then we go straight into the next news. So let's see where we were at inside the comment section. We were. I don't know why we're losing connection back to back. Are we back? Can everybody see me? Can you hear me? If you can see me and hear me, drop a thumbs up. You're back. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section before we do go through the next news on tonight's live. Let's see. You're back now. Okay, hopefully it's fixed now because it went off and on. I can see and hear you. That's good. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Follow essentially CMO construction on Facebook. Absolute facts. Let's go. Share the live. Post a comment outside the live. Let's go. The slowdown of the Clarity Act has had an influential Republicans whose families and ties into Bitcoin heavily. Miles, I shared this article a few nights ago. Yes, you did. Miles, I'm retired military and now about to retire educator, college and secondary school, and a registered Democrat. I'm pro-crypto. All Democrats are not in line with specific agendas. I agree. Not all the Democrats. Some of the Democrats are turning against Elizabeth Warren, which is good news in my opinion. I'm tired of hearing Santa Elizabeth Warren's name. She does not have a problem with her husband and yeah, her getting richer. I agree. The Republicans has to do a better job explaining that to the public instead of buying into these theoretics. It makes both parties look bad and leaves essentially ununiform publics to make uninformed choices. I agree. Hello, Miles and CMF. How are you doing? I'm doing great, Carlos. Good to see you as well. Remember, all politicians lie. Democrats and Republicans. I agree. Let's keep this real. I agree. The public has to better educate themselves on this issue. I agree as well. You are back. Let's go. You're back now. Let's go. You're back. I can see and hear you. Lost it. I'm back. Hi, Miles and family. I can see you. Good. Gone again. Yep. We went and came back about a few times. That, I think, is Virgin Media's fault. The broadband company. I think they're doing some sort of updates on the network. That's why that happened. Now, moving on, essentially from that to AVAX. AVAX has just enabled essentially KBank. Oh, okay. See, now that's not working. Now the comment section isn't. The comment section is not working at all. I can't see another great program. Let's go. I don't know what's happening, I'll be honest. Okay, since we're having issues right towards the end of the live and I can't see the comment section for the time being, we're just going to go straight to the XRP news because we're wrapping up. We're coming up to the end of the live show, to be fairly honest as well. We only had one AVAX news in between and then straight away the Ripple news. So since that is happening, I don't know what's happening there. We're going to go straight into the XRP news before whatever is happening completely cuts off. Ripple CEO on CNN is walking to uses XRP to speed up money transfers. Brad went on CNN, XRP's future, and so on, and which is what we're going to go through right now. So this is what Brad had to say, essentially on live news. He said XRP is like a Bitcoin. It's a digital asset. It's the third most essentially valuable digital asset there is. And what we do is we take a transaction between banks. His remarks essentially have initiated discussions across the crypto and financial worlds about XRP becoming a foundational instrument for cross-border settlements. Garlinghouse explained that inefficiencies of traditional banking instead of having a bank pre-fund essentially account at the other bank, which is how essentially correspondent banking works today. And the bank essentially of Brad and of essentially of the pre-funded banks of Julia, perhaps in pounds, and then I would debit and credit that. But also that means that I have to pre-fund also the dormant capitals sitting at the other banks. On the Ripple net, on the liquidity, on-demand liquidity, ODL, a sending bank also converts local currencies into XRP, transfers it over to the XRP ledger, and the receiving bank converts it back into the destination currency as well. Across essentially, as of 2025, Ripple net counts for more than 300 banks and financial institutions across 6 continents. Brad Garlinghouse also highlighted the real-world use cases. The consumer itself doesn't actually see that it's flowing through XRP to solve a problem. That's a key essentially sentence that Brad mentioned, that the consumer actually doesn't see XRP being used in the background because it is being used in the background. But the consumer sees simply a better product at a better price. Major financial players such as Santander Europe, SBI Holdings Asia, Santander, essentially, and Standard Chartered Bank Middle East and global markets use Ripple's infrastructure. About 40% of RippleNet also essentially partners actively, and the use of XRP 4 ODL-based settlements, with total proceeds value exceeding $1.3 trillion in the first half of 2025. Girlinghouse also emphasized that XRP's technical advantages, even compared to Bitcoin, which takes up to 12 minutes to complete essentially one transaction. XRP is extremely fast at about 3 seconds per in contrast to how Bitcoin essentially. Okay, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. Essentially, that was Brad on CNN talking about XRP's future, talking about how XRP has advanced so much from where it was. 300 banks are still essentially essentially XRP is being used in the background, but you cannot just see it yet as the consumer. And looking ahead, essentially XRP is just a better version of Bitcoin by a mile. On that note, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. I'm so sorry for whatever has just happened towards the endings of our tonight's live show. I'm still having issues from being able to see the comment section on my side. I'm having issues essentially, seeing X on my side as well. I don't know what's really happened, to be very honest. Major issues still happening. Could either be a restream or could be my broadband company, Virgin Media. Maybe they're doing some sort of updates. I ain't sure about that. Now, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. Honestly, thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in, as they always do. Thanks so much to everyone who's always tuned in. This was episode essentially 418 of the CMF live show. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday, Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards. And tomorrow and the next day, there's going to be no live show. So Thursday and Friday, no live show. The live show will return either on Monday or Tuesday. I will definitely keep people updated, but that's only because I'm going on essentially a trip. So I will be back Monday or Tuesday, but I'll obviously be active and live in the Telegram group and also on X. If anybody wants to contact me, go ahead. And if anybody needs any help, also contact me as well. No problem. I will see everybody in a Telegram group. If you're in the Telegram group, probably tomorrow. If you're not, I will probably see you on X or essentially on Monday or Tuesday. And on that note, have a great weekend as well. And Monday or Tuesday after my essentially trip. Again, it's just not working. It's just disconnecting. So then everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you're around the world, CMF members. I'm genuinely so sorry for what's happened. It's right now struggling for some orderly reason to keep up. Safe trip. Thank you so much. Some comments before we do go. Safe trip. Thank you for a bunch of miles. I can see some safe travel. Much Scott, Ray, Scott, thank you so much. Shelly, thank you so much. Jason, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a great day and night and weekend. See you on essentially Tuesday, essentially, everybody, or Monday. I'll keep everyone updated. If you have any questions or comments, need any help, contact me, no problem. See you every Monday or Tuesday. Love you all. Like, comment, share, retweet, follow, subscribe if you already haven't. If you have, thank you so much.